I had one person say to me, I didn't even know that the children could do that, because we had some students from the school that were in the cooking competition at AgriFest the other day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people were obviously surprised that they were able to get to second place. And it is sad when people verbalize that, because as much as people think that children are unable to, or they may be unable to understand, they do.
Welcome to Just a Conversation, the podcast where we discuss the topics that matter to you. I'm Mikul Elcock, here with
Aisha Reid.
And today we're breaking down the challenges and realities of special education in Barbados. Are our children with special needs getting the support they deserve? What's working and what still needs to change? We've got a powerful panel today: educator Tania Belgrave, advocate and parent Asha Alleyne-Renwick, and student Akio Nurse. Let's talk about how we break these barriers for good. Today we are back again discussing education. We've got our lovely panel, Asha, Akio, and Tania. Aisha, what are your thoughts on special education in Barbados and how it's being treated?
To be honest, I never really gave it much thought until Asha, actually, when her son was born.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw how much work and effort she has put into raising the awareness with Down syndrome in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when I was like, whoa, yeah, this is something that we need to continue to do. And she's been an advocate for these last 14 years.
Right.
She's pushing hard, and I really admire that about her. So when I really think about it in general, though, I don't think that we are doing enough. I think that we are still a ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not sure that our children really get what they need, not to the fault of teachers or anything like that, but I think it's our system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe Tanya could, when we get to you could tell us how we can make some changes in that regard, but I still think that we are not catering for all students. I still think that Barbados is catering for one particular type of student, not even in terms of just special needs, but we just focus on math, English, science, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that it's time that we maybe not even science. I feel that it's time that we just break it down and really get to nitty-gritty and design studies and a system that benefits every child in Barbados.
Okay.
So no child will be left behind.
All right. So Asha, it sounds like we coming to you first. So just tell us a bit about your journey in this field.
Okay, as Aisha correctly stated, I would have started advocating when my son was born with Down syndrome. It would have been an unexpected diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So the start of my journey really was very personal in terms of not only finding out more about Down syndrome, but then reaching out into the community to see where the other parents were on the same journey, because you tend to feel pretty isolated in the beginning. So I would have started a support group back when he was about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then from there we grew from strength to strength, and we registered as a charity in 2019. And then we continued our advocacy, but we did it on a bigger scale. And we would have brought the Rock Your Socks campaign here to raise awareness about Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And we just keep developing, we just keep getting more members and pushing the idea of inclusion, the idea, of course, and it's not an idea now, we want to move past the idea stage, the fact that people with special needs, children, adults, are worthy. So I really think that special needs is more of a human rights. It really is a human rights fight and struggle in terms of inclusion and treating them the way they need to be treated. Mm-hmm. So it started out as a personal journey, and then we would have brought on to include people with Down syndrome in the society, children and adults.
All right, good. Well, I'm glad you're contributing to the fight, if you could call it that. Akio, I was doing some research and I saw you on the internet. I saw you on Instagram. I saw you're kind of famous. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Um, well, my business is called Frameworks,
Mm-hmm.
and how I started in growing in Frameworks is from my teachers and the help of my friends and Tania.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Okay.
I was really confident in my business,
Right.
even though a lot of teachers told me it is a good plan.
Yeah.
But the material that I'm using for my business or the name of my business is called Frameworks.
Yes.
And the material that I'm using is called driftwood.
Right.
Driftwood is like some stuff came from the beaches. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was really old. I
Right.
heard or looked up and researched about driftwood,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about shipwrecks, how it came from like broken boats, either trees or that
Yeah.
was like falling down.
Yeah.
And I just used those like stuff to make frames out of things.
Right.
And I really made a quote from that, or I made a little saying like using something broken and giving it a new type of life.
Oh, okay. Very
Mhm.
good. I
But-
saw it and it looks really good. So you're recycling and
Yes.
helping the environment. You're doing
Yeah.
it so much at once.
Is it quality or
Eco?
eco-friendly?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Tanya, you're smiling. So
Was Akio a past student of yours or something?
I don't have past students.
Well, mhm.
They're my students.
There's for life.
Mhm.
Yes, Akio is one of my students, and I smile because he has come a very long way, even in having this sit down and this conversation,
Mhm.
and him being all nervous but
Mhm.
still being able to speak through it
Mhm.
and build his business and build his brand. So I feel like a proud auntie.
Mhm. Mhm. So tell
Yeah.
us a bit about your journey as a teacher.
Well, to be honest,
Mhm.
I would have been running from being a teacher for a while.
Mhm.
And there was an ad in the paper for this new school for children with special needs. My husband's cousin has Down syndrome, and we just automatically linked and clicked. And I would have been working with her and some other children that I would have interacted with, and he was like, you know what, I think this is you.
Mhm.
Just apply, this is you. And I applied, not for a teaching position, let me just say.
Mhm.
Then I had to interact with one of my former students as well when he was at the primary school he was at. And in that moment, the person hiring said, nah, I can put you in the classroom. So I started as an assistant and worked my way up to teacher. Teaching has been fairly rewarding, I can say. Even if it's warming, because sometimes people think that being an educator means the whole class has to do well, or you have to have those high grades to excel. But setting certain goals for students and then seeing them achieve and surpass those goals as a teacher,
Mhm.
it gives me great joy. Mhm.
All right. So I can put this out to the table. Policy versus practical practice in the actual classroom.
Yeah,
How
let me
does
get
that
out
go?
in it again.
Yeah. We jump straight into it. And we want to hear from you as well as somebody who had to go through the system. What is it like a day in the classroom? Anybody.
A day in a special needs classroom is not easy. As I have not worked directly in mainstream classrooms, I can't make a fair comparison, but I can only imagine that it's rough in any classroom. Within the special education classroom, we have students of varying levels, varying cognitive abilities, varying physical abilities, which makes it then very challenging for us to reach the goals set in policy,
Mhm.
right? So if you have a class with 2 students like Akio, and then I have a class with to children with cerebral palsy, but on different levels. And then I have, 3 children with Down syndrome in the class, and they have different levels. So I have to constantly be adapting and adjusting the lesson so that I capture as much of the children as I can in that lesson. Policy dictates that, we get the children up to a certain level and we teach them to a certain curriculum. It is not always achievable. That's the reality of the classroom.
All right, Asha, I want to hear from you because you kind of hitting 3 different areas:
Yes,
teacher,
yes,
advocate, and then your son.
Parent, yeah. That is true. Because I've been a teacher for 15 years. I'm still a teacher for 15 years as well. And my experience would be in mainstream, yes? So I can speak to probably what inclusion or attempts at inclusion would be looking like now. Much like what Tania said, even within the general ed classroom, you would have different levels. So you might have a student that is an A student, and you have your C student, and you have probably students that are performing below the average. So once again, we're put in a place where we have to practice differentiated teaching. So imagine that situation, and then you put your child with special needs now, may it Down syndrome, autism, within that classroom. And it's obviously where we're going now as a society in terms of inclusion. As a teacher, it is a challenging situation. It is challenging. So I think the situation within the classrooms now is one that calls for more support. It calls for teachers' aides, maybe not 1, maybe 2. It calls for what we would call parent volunteers, because one of our major challenges as an association is around school arriving time. So say like 5, where the child with Down syndrome, and I'm sure Tania would know as well in terms of potty training and that kind of stuff. So you reach the age, you're hoping for inclusion, but the child is not yet ready for the classroom in terms of potty training, and then we get an issue straight there. So we need to see support in the classroom whereby something like that does not stop the child from entering school. So sometimes it's the basic things like that for parents. It can be a challenge, and then for teachers, it also is a challenge. So I actually believe where we are now, there must be stronger teacher and school-home partnerships in terms of understanding what the parent is experiencing and what the teacher is experiencing, as opposed to a situation where we pit one against the other, and then we end up where we probably are now, to be honest.
Right. Akio, how has it been for you at school? You're I know universally nobody likes going to school. But how is school? How is school for you? How's the day at school for you like?
Well, the day at school for me is sometimes boring and interesting, because then I get to learn more about others than myself. Because growing up, when I first came to the school, it was challenging because everybody was so different.
Right.
Everybody could read. I have dyslexia, so just
Okay.
But I couldn't read properly, and I had a struggle in some areas.
Okay.
So everybody was different. Like a student named Rosaya, she was different because she couldn't really move a trolley, and what our teachers would do is try to help her and try to make us understand what she's going through and what we are. What's the difference between me and her?
So you would say that your teachers supported?
Yes, please.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Very good. Okay, so Asha, what about your son in the environment?
My son is 14 now. He's at the Learning Center. He would have come through the system as well. Initially, I really wanted inclusion for him, to be honest. We're having an open conversation. And I know, and especially given the research that I would have done, I know it is the best thing for children with special needs. Being included within the general education classroom is definitely better for the children with the child with special needs, and research has also shown that it's also better for the children within the classroom, because of course then they learn things like patience, they learn things, compassion, the soft skills that tend to be left out from education as we pursue the academic.
Kind of like what Akio just mentioned.
Exactly, exactly. And we can see where we're going as a society. No, we have to put more emphasis on these soft skills. So the child within the classroom teaches so much. People tend to be worried about the academic side. Like the child, if you put a child with special needs in the classroom, we'll keep back the class or the class. We shouldn't be there. We're past that, because I mean, even in terms of research base, if the child, and there's a name for it, I don't know if Tanya can help me, in terms of the expert learner, whereby the child would have the majority of the knowledge, say you finish all your papers first, and the child with special needs might be struggling. You're finished, teacher can easily say, okay, go and help James with his work, or go and explain something to James, you're finished. Thereby the child that's explaining gets to reinforce their knowledge, and they're helping at the same time. So I do believe that there are ways around it. But back to Ashton, he would have been in a typical, he started at Sunshine, which I loved for him in terms of the care. He went on to another private nursery school, and then he went into Erdiston, which I loved for him. I loved the teaching there. He went from Erdiston. He spent a little while at Derek Smith, and then he went on to the Learning Center, where he is now. It's been an interesting experience within the system. It really has. It's not easy for a parent when you get to school age and you have to start thinking about, where will I send my child? All the feelings come up. Do you want him in a special unit or a learning support unit, as we say? Do you want to fight the system and fight for him to be there and fight the principals? And I'm saying fight because for a parent, it often feels like a struggle. Because from the time you get through the gate, you have to start saying, and I've had parents sharing stories such as, say, security guards, or this is no knock on security guards. I'm just saying from a parent's perspective, and when we talk inclusion, we have to really break it down. We have to look at what is it really going to look like from the time the child gets there. Is it going to be accepted? Will the security guard say, what is child doing here? Will the principal say? So I find that we talk on this level where we really have to break it down into what will it look like for the child when they get there. The school meal server, the groundsman, the teachers, the children. So in terms how I see inclusion, and when I thought about my son, what will it look like? Are we sensitized as a society enough that I could go to work comfortably and say, yeah, he's fine? I didn't think we were there. And I was a teacher. I'm a teacher at that time. So I really had to consider those things. Hence his placement. But I must say I've been satisfied so far. There are some loopholes that I hope that we can work on going forward, even as a society, in terms of the options for post-primary school. But we're getting there.
Okay. Tanya, misconceptions. I don't know if you could touch on the misconceptions that people have about, the different learning styles.
And also about education. Academics is not all. As Asha pointed out, the soft skills are important and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of misconceptions where the abilities of students with special needs are concerned. That comes from, as you guys were saying earlier, the need for the math and the English and those things to be on par. Obviously, being in a private setting, we speak with parents, the parents that are willing to sit with us and have those conversations about what goals you intend for your child, and then realistically aligning them, because sometimes that is one of our biggest challenges. The unrealistic goals set by parents, by administration, by policymakers of what, children should be able to achieve. So take a student like Akio, for example. Some person may see him and say, oh, well, he should be sitting CXCs. But really and truthfully, where he is at is past CXC and still a success, because he is the creator of his own business. He's able to manage and function within that and ask for the help and support that he needs to make it, to further it. So the misconceptions that these children are unable or will pull down a class, or, you have to be all back here and these others are in front here because we need to maintain the standard. And a lot of them are usually put to the back of the class. The teacher, and this is reports I would have heard from students that came into me from mainstream, the teacher doesn't see them. They are unable to understand. They can't learn. They learn differently. So some of them may have to do stuff in order to learn. They have to make the box to learn that the box, that a cube has 6 sides, instead of you drawing it and showing them, because some of them have comorbidities. They may not be able to see the depth perception in the 2D drawing to understand that it's a 3D object. So it's just little simple things that sometimes just having a conversation can enlighten you to. I had one person say to me, I didn't even know that the children could do that, because we had some students from the school that were in the cooking competition at AgriFest the other day.
Right.
And people were obviously surprised that they were able to get to second place. And it is sad when people verbalize that, because as much as people think that children are unable to, or they may be unable to understand, they do. They know that you don't expect anything of them. And depending on the social, economic, demographic that they come from, they may just fall into that and say, you know, all right, well, if you don't think nothing of me,
what's the point?
It is what it is. You may not have parents that are as dedicated as Asha. They're parents that, you know, no, they ain't learn nothing, so
What's the point?
what's the point?
Yeah.
And then there's the misconception that when they come to a special needs school, they're just being babysat, because we're not teaching the regular curriculum. So they don't see the point in me coloring the whole day and the children learning colors, or learning that they need 3 pencils and, you know, different shades, and we're putting it above and below. So just simple things that don't look like learning are teaching. Learning is taking place, but it is not the learning that is expected or the teaching that is expected.
So you mentioned expectations. So my next question would be, you know, our system, we love to assess, we love to grade and give points and put people in position. How does that work or differ in the, or is it similar?
Well, assessment is always necessary when teaching, but again, assessment goes to the goals and targets set. So for my class over the holiday, and Akio can attest to this, I like to give a lot of projects. And the projects are usually parent included. Right? So I like to put a little challenging piece in there that I know the children will need help with, because they need to see as well that they have the support of their parents. So I got a lot of little tricks and things that I do. However, the students would have brought in their projects and they know that they're getting graded on certain things. And I let them know that, well, if I want them to be a little more creative, I will tell them, well, you can get little extra marks if you be creative, you know, because some of our students have challenges with ideology. They can't get the idea. So you give them the choices, or you tell them, you know, this is what I need you to do. And then you tell them, but if you do a little extra and zhuzh it up, you know, you can get that little extra 2 point. And they like that, because even though it is not something that will determine if they come first or second or third, everybody wants to feel like they did what they did, and they did it well.
Yeah, achieve
right?
something. Yeah.
So obviously the targets that you set are conducive to the students you have in front of you. They're conducive to what you are teaching and what you intend for them to get from it. What those underlying skills that you want them to have, without being blatant and telling them, well, if you don't, and don't is a strong word to use with them, because I find some students don't like when you tell them, if you don't do. It's better to use more positive language, like, well, if you do this, you know, they're more encouraged to lean into that than, well, if you don't, you will not get marks. Because then it's like, well, they've become so accustomed to that then that's their automatic response. Well, all right, whatever. But if you do, you got something for you, you know?
Yeah.
And they love that.
All right. Akio was quick to say, I want to hear what some of these projects, what some of the things that you...
And also about your experience in school too. Where did you start? You went through the public system, or?
Yeah, I went through the public system first, gradually going to the we call it not special needs school, like just just like single schools where I just be normal and stuff. Because when I was in the other schools, I tend to get, sometimes it was bullying, or it was hard to really communicate with other people.
Right.
Because at that time it was confusing. Everybody was so different to me, and everybody used to like tease me how I can't read or this or that.
Right.
Just a little something. But I said glad I went to Erdiston and the Dartmouth school, because it opened up my eyes a little bit how different everybody is, how everybody is. And Aitaya's projects used to be very interesting.
Right.
I like doing them, but there's one that I like doing the most is when she make us read a book, and then we have to write a summary out of it. I say that helped me more in my areas in the business, because then I have to write summaries of what I did, what I have to do, what's the next thing I gotta do, and helps me not forget about things, because I forget most of things.
Right. The fact that he has a big smile on his face while recalling this makes me 100% convinced that whatever was being done was working.
For sure. Ashton in that extent, in terms of school and projects and how he went through from when he went to Erdiston and beyond.
Yeah, his Erdiston, I found, was a very positive experience for him. Their approach to learning, they try to keep it as close to the curriculum as possible, but yet still involving IEP planning and targeting the work to the students' level. So it was challenging and still rewarding. When he started in reception, I was very pleased, because especially with Down syndrome, you get a lot of don'ts. So, he would never do this, and he would never learn to this, and he would never. And when he went into reception, and I always credit his teacher, she's not in the ministry, but Miss Carter, who really pushed him. And we had a very close relationship. And that's why I always push parent-teacher relationships, especially when it comes to special needs. It's everything. At the end of the day, you want to hear, oh, Ashton did so-and-so today, or maybe he didn't. And the teacher calls and complains, and it's very important. So his teacher really worked very closely with him, and he was like reading at 5. That was something that I hadn't expected, but I got to see how the approach to teaching the visual, because children with Down syndrome and most neurodiverse children tend to be very visual. So all the visuals that were involved in his reading, all the books that she made for him. I remember complaining to her one day, Ashton giving a lot of trouble at home. He won't use the bathroom one time. Mornings I can't get him out. And she, by the afternoon, she had sent home, I don't know what you call it, laminated pictures, right, in a binder, like go to thing, Ashton, this, babe time, this thing, like a whole, and said, no, you try that at home. And it worked. Of course, I would say, Miss Carter, if you don't do it. So it was a little bit of mommy threatening in there as well. But the visual really, really helped. So, and I say that to say the partnerships are very important. So I found that if there was something at school that he wasn't doing well in, by the time I got home, I could message the teacher, well, Asha don't seem to understand. So it was that I found really, really helped. With the approach, the curriculum, and I was listening to Tania in terms of the project base, because it's an approach that really works. Every child with Down syndrome is not going to be academic. Every child is not going to be able to read, but that doesn't have to mean the child is a failure. It doesn't have to mean that the system has failed them. It means that they have other strengths that do not align with the curriculum. And even within the general education, and where we're going, I think we'll have to move away from the expectation that every child is going to be academic.
Correct.
Or that the child with special needs does not belong in the classroom because they cannot be academic. Because if you speak to some of the parents, you may discover the parent might not want the child to sit CXC. The parent might not want the child to sit 11 plus. I shouldn't sit 11 plus. But does that mean that they belong in a separate setting? No, it means that your goals as a parent are not the same as the school, but that doesn't, or it's not an excuse for exclusion. Right, for exclusion. So I think in terms of Ashton, he's in secondary now. He's going well. He's going through teenage years, so say a prayer for me. They're getting all the low pants down there, and the chains, and the music, and right. But then I remind myself, you know what? You were a teenager too, and we did the same thing, right? So I'm proud of him that he's developing well. I'm watching him carefully to make sure that he stays in line, and I'm hoping to even push a little more collaboration with the school, because we find as they get older, we have to realize as parents with children with special needs, we tend to be very hovering when they're, they're little, and we're watching for the milestones as they grow up, and you get accustomed to having a child with a special needs. Sometimes, just as with typical parents, we might tend to back off a little bit. So it is, so for me and myself, my situation, I'm trying to be a little more on top of it now too, and just watching carefully, continue to foster the relationship with the school, so I can get a good idea of how he is developing from primary school. But he's doing very well. He's doing well now as well.
Before you move on, what about the relationship with his siblings? Were they able to push him then? Because even though he wasn't in the mainstream school, being with them, did that help?
I find so. His little brother Tiago he'll be 10 this year. Ashton will be 15 this year. Yeah, definitely that sibling rivalry, right? That sibling, having a sibling, it doesn't matter that he's younger than him. It really does help, because Ashton was able to function like the big brother. His brother knows he has Down syndrome. Recently, he asked me, he better have Down syndrome too, because he heard him talking about the disability grant at home, and he was like, well, I should got money, and you got to send me some of that money. Like, we definitely have that kind of household, yeah? Right. So everybody is sharing information, and so he doesn't see the negative in it, at least not yet. He hasn't taken on the stigma in the society. Sometimes he might feel a little left out, because Ashton will need a little more attention. We will, around the campaign, go to things, and he knows, it starts, Ashton has Down syndrome, so if you're taking pictures, he up behind, trying to get in the picture, but it's positive. Right. It's a positive experience. People tend to think that siblings are burdened, like, oh no, you have a brother. It is a reality that when I'm not going to be here forever, so when I'm not here, he will have to lean on his brother. His brother will, and he has an older sister as well, 2 older sisters in fact. So it is a reality, but we practice from young, so they know that that's their brother with Down syndrome. He might boss them around sometimes too. So once the love and the support is there, I try not to worry about it. It's hard not to, because life is as it is, but right now having siblings really is a positive for him.
Right. Okay, so Akio, you had mentioned the bullying, so I wanted to touch on that. Teachers, how does that play out? How do you handle it? How did you handle it, first off?
Well, at first I didn't really know how to handle it, to be real.
You didn't beat anybody, right?
I mean, no. Okay. I'm gonna keep that on the
Okay.
But I always try to avoid the problem before it gets too high. Okay. Because I didn't really get in trouble or anything like that.
Right.
I was like a good boy a little bit.
You should be.
But a little bit mischief. But I would say more in bullying though, it should, what needs to be done is, like, everybody's not different. They're all the same way. Everybody's their own person, their own self. And getting to know about each other is a good thing too. Right. Learn about all the stuff that they have and what they don't have. Learn the stuff that they can't do and what they can do. Even helping each other out, like Aisha said. And trying to guide one another, because sometimes everybody goes on a dark path, on a good path, depending on the person's life and actions and what they choose.
Right, okay. So how do you deal with it? Tania's smiling. Let Tania talk. I don't want to hear Tania.
No, just listening to Akio talk, it gives me a little validation. What I try to do is, like he said, help them to understand that we are all people. That's the first thing I tell them. Everybody is somebody. So don't ever think that you are more than or less than anyone else. And we have a lot of discussions around what we see in others. How do they differ from you? How do you differ from them? How can you help them? How can they help you? And bullying is not tolerated anywhere around me at all. And they know that. So I usually have the approach with the ones that can get it, because the relationships that I have with each child is different. So if one of them decide they want to bully depending on the relationship I have with them, I may become the bully.
Right.
And then you tell me how you feel when I am the bully. And I am not a nice bully.
Okay.
Right.
To be fair.
Right.
I am not a nice bully. It starts with respect, respecting yourself. What would you want people to think about you? You know? And then respecting others. Do you think that that is something you should do to somebody else?
Right.
Had it been done to you, how would you feel? What would you expect? And I usually tell them, there are two types of attention you can get from me. The good kind or the bad kind. So let your actions reflect that you want the good kind of attention from me. Because the bad kind of attention is not one that you want. And again, I would say this all goes back to what the relationship is with the student. So Akio, as one of my students that I would have worked with closely with his social and emotional, pulling him out from that dark place of being constantly bullied all the time, coming from a place of bullying, he is one to take until he can't. And then when he can't, then where do we go from there? Right? So I ain't getting no younger. And I ain't able to pull nobody off for nobody else. So my task to them is always to teach them to manage themselves. Know where you are before the kitty kaboom comes.
Right.
And know what you need to do. So they have a lot of different techniques that they would use to calm themselves down, a lot of different avenues that they can choose to go. And if your choice is to fight, then we would go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mama bear.
Yes, bullying. It's always a concern for a parent with a child with special needs.
Yes.
Actually, it's probably one of the main concerns, something that would keep you from considering inclusion because we're scared that the child might be bullied. It's been my experience in teaching that children want sensitized though, because bullying will always happen. And I like Tania's approach. Like, I could be a bully too. Like, once she's showing that relationship is very important, the teacher relationship and the example that you set and the fact that the children are watching you. So once the parent is comfortable and once the teacher has understood that this child is being included, because I guess we always come back to the teachers because really they're the example. In the school, you send the child into school, the tone, the atmosphere, the sensitization that has occurred will determine how successfully that child is included in the school. Does the school population know that the child has a special need, and that is why the child may be stimming or, may be doing this. That's why the child may have, with Down syndrome, we tend to have like a more loose jaw sometimes. The child may have a protruding tongue. Will the class laugh at the child, or is the class come to expect this is what a child with Down syndrome looks like or may look like, or and so there's nothing to laugh about. So therefore, yes, you might have your one-off bully, but it is not something that is pervasive in the school setting. So it is something that I definitely feared for a while. Like, how will he be accepted? What would his, but I mean, he's pretty rough and tumble in turn. Sometimes I wouldn't, he's not the bully, right? So I say, I don't know if me and his dad maybe have gone the other way, like, nobody can unfair you kind of thing. Because we had to enforce that with him as well. But he was at Erdeston and the atmosphere there was, so I didn't have that experience. But I always tend to, I guess, because of teaching, think about the general ed classroom. What would it look like? It's been my experience that children tend to accept differences once they're sensitized. What we expect, we go there, the children get unfair. Not necessarily. I've seen situations that have been beautiful in school settings, where the child with special needs, I've seen it with Down syndrome, run to get the bag. Go to your mommy here. They sometimes hover. In fact, sometimes they overprotect the child is once they know what's going on. So I have been accused of being an optimist. I think that's a good thing, right? I don't think it's being naive. Children they are naturally accepting creatures. They really are. They accept, they love, once they're sensitized. Now, if you have a teacher or a principal or the school atmosphere that actually they believe the child shouldn't be there, it takes more time for that to be, because it would be a little, and our children tend to be very sensitive, as they are very sensitive, so they know some of them are not as verbal. That is another concern that I really had. Ashton, he speaks, he can talk, but he might leave out things, right? And a lot of children with special needs have that communication barrier. So then when we send them out into the world, we wonder if something could happen. They are vulnerable. He might come home and not tell me up to now, waiting for the real story as to what happened to his cell phone that he took up from. Like, we sometimes we miss, right? There are barriers there. They may not come home and tell you this, what he did this to me, that person. That means that I have to feel comfortable with the setting that he's in, right? That only comes through strong collaboration. The teacher can say, well, this happened. The principal can say, and it is an accepting environment. Yes, they may have a one-off bully. They're always bullies. But I've seen that once you deal with that particular student, and sometimes those are the ringleaders. Those are the ones that the other students are watching. And if you're behaving that way, if it can get you, and if it could do like Tania and show you that, hey, I'm right there. Once I can get you, then and it's not, and you start young. We don't wait until we get to secondary school then to start saying, no, we sensitize from young. We teach the students, look, this is a child with a difference, and we hold our workshops and we sensitize staff and students. And I think that it is a possibility to get, not totally eradicate, because there will be the one child, but we shouldn't let the fear of bullying be something to stop inclusion from going forward.
I wanted to throw this out to both of you again. Changes to the national policy, if any, maybe for all. what changes would you like to see if you had a wish list?
One of the biggest challenges we have within the special education classroom is support, as Asha would have said. You need support, parent support. We have some students that may need speech language therapist support, occupational therapy support, and it is an expensive undertaking. It is expensive to have all of these people on staff at a school with teachers and a teacher's aide in class. And what it does is the teachers that are in these classes have to become these people. And sometimes becoming all of this to a class of 15 is a lot, right? So from that level, once and training and education, obviously there are teachers that would have been trained for the general education classroom. It is then harder for them to adapt without the training when a student with special education needs is included into their class, because then they would have been operating on a certain level, and that is where that disconnect comes with, oh, now how I can get this child to be with the others,
right?
And that is what happens when we don't take initiative, and I'm speaking about the teacher themselves, to say, let me go educate myself on this, because sometimes as a nation we wait until the government says do this. This is what you need to do. Every teacher needs to go do a special education course or something, but special education does not always look like a Ashton or an Akio. Special education can look like a little girl that cannot sit. She can't stop talking. She's fidgety. It looks like a little boy who sits quietly and doesn't give any trouble in the class, right? And if you are unable to detect, maybe, if you don't have that background in your head to say, this is not just, he's such a well-behaved boy, but he's not up to this, that, why? When you don't have that wherewithal, then that is where we find students falling by the wayside. And I always say that a child doesn't have to be overly pronounced to have special needs or to have special education needs, right? So if you are trained in it to some extent, you are able to modify your lesson plans adapt your lesson plans to capture that student, because every teacher needs to be able to capture as many students in that classroom as possible, however that looks.
Yeah.
Even if the engagement is full, but when you do the assessments, as you were asking before, when you do the assessment, instead of saying, well, I want you to write all of these answers, you have, because we also need resources, yeah? We have to make those for ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
And so you have a student that is nonverbal, and I will say this for the general public, nonverbal does not mean unable to communicate or understand, right? And some of it is that they just don't feel like talking. It is not necessarily that they can't. So if you have your graphics and your pictures and you can set that out that they can show you the answer, that is assessment. Assessment is not always having to write a full sentence and saying the cat went under the table.
Right.
You know, you could show me a picture of the cat going under the table. You could draw me a picture of the cat going under the table. You could tell me the cat went under the table. The assessment is still the same. We are I'm assessing understanding. Right? So resources definitely are access to certain resources and collaboration and those extra people in the classrooms. Aides, OTs, and SLTs.
Asha?
I'm definitely on board with that for sure. I know we're in the process of education reform. We just had a national policy pass for disability. All of them speak to the things that Tania just mentioned. Of course, as a parent and as a teacher, it always seems more urgent on our end. So sometimes you may get parents getting a little frustrated. They're wondering, when are we going to see this happening? We need to see this now. Teachers' aides, we definitely need that. That is, for me, that's the most, if not the most important thing that we need to see implemented soon is aides in the classroom. And not only teachers' aides, we need also to have resource personnel that's responsible for, I don't want to say accidents, but we need to have someone on plan that if this child in nursery or reception or infants A has an accident, that you don't have to call the parent from home. That is such an important matter that affects parents. I went through it, but fortunately my son was at Erdiston and they had a support auntie in the classroom, and if he did have an accident, they would not, I have gone to the school, but it wouldn't be like a recurrent thing. Now we know that it is within the law that these students are to be potty trained, but realistically children will have accidents. You put it on a child with special needs, immediately the assumption is already, well, they're already coming with Down syndrome, no, they're having accidents, but definitely they don't belong here for sure, right? So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Without the support, it doesn't work, because then the attitude changes, the teacher has to stop teaching and attend to that child. So I sympathize with teachers as well, and I find the divide is starting to get a little wider in terms of, are the teachers doing enough? Is it the parents? Is it the administration? We need to work together. There needs to be an understanding of the needs of the parent, especially the parent that needs to know that the child will be taken care of, and the accident at school is not going to mean that everybody immediately thinks the child doesn't belong there.
Right.
So that is an issue. So in terms of personnel, to me, it really is human resources, right? We need the aides, we need the volunteers, we need the hands-on, we need the technology. The national policy does speak to all of those things. We also need a roadmap. I call it a roadmap because what happens when it's school time? Where does the parent know? Because according to the new national policy, the child does belong there. And I know there's a tribunal that's going to be set up to deal with the policy. We need to have the parents and the general public knowing what's there, knowing that, hey, when the parent comes and says, I want my child to go to school at Charles F. Broome and not the unit, right? The child going to school here and not the unit because it's in policy. So come for me. You understand? Like that is the teeth that we need the policy to have. And not only come for me, but when I put my child there, understand that I'm putting my child there with knowing that a teacher's aide is there, knowing that if they have an accident that there is somebody on staff whose job it is to deal with the accident. You're not asking a favor. You're not asking the
you're
ancillary
begging
staff.
nobody.
You're begging nobody like, oh, thing, and they clean her today. We got to clean her tomorrow. Call the parent. This is foolishness. And we're human. It happens, right? I shouldn't used to have accidents for a while, and I'm his mother. And sometimes he used to be like, you understand? It's a lot. It's a lot. Imagine a teacher. Imagine a teacher with 20 other students.
Correct.
And then I remember in my early teaching years, and I think Ashton was young, and I remember cleaning a student more than once. She was in my class, got in a lot of trouble for it. Well, you clean a student for it, that's not your job. It said, and it was something. Yes, it was something. I would never forget it, because for me, I was a parent, and Ashton was going through his thing at school too. So in my head,
You welcome.
you understand? I understand. I'm a parent too, so I was like, I don't want to call the mother. The mother was going through a lot as well. So I'm like, let me deal with the child and get back. Could you take an item like that? But I hope I ain't getting myself in trouble. But this is something that I did as a teacher. I was made to understand you cannot do that. You're setting the wrong precedent. The child should be potty trained. What they're doing here, that kind of stuff. So those are the day-to-day things that really happen in classrooms when you're trying to include children with special needs. It's really a attitude thing, and you can't really blame the teachers sometimes too, because the teachers really are trying. They're trying to deal with the other 20, right? They don't want to step away. Sometimes the policy is not clear enough. What do you do? Whose job is it? So when we go forward into inclusion, we need to make sure that everybody knows their role. So you're not doing a favor here. The teacher's aide knows that I'm adapting the curriculum. I'm adapting this lesson. The child does not have to multiply 12 by 12. The child might have to count 12 blocks.
Right.
You call the parent. The child count 12 blocks. For sure, if you count 12 blocks, hooray, let's carry on. You understand?
Exactly.
We are in this thing, this race. I'm listening here to the fact that he has a business.
Right.
Amazing.
Amazing. So he has a business.
First thing when you
First, we're still trying to build businesses, you understand? But we're in this race. Right? We're trying to get to the end. Each other got to do this. At 11, they're failure because they can't get to this school. We really need to move away from that. But it will begin in the primary schools. It's going to begin in the primary schools where we have the acceptance, we have the awareness. This child might not be academic, they may be an athlete. You talk to some of them, man, you will hear some things because there's a new generation, right? I want to be a businessman. I've heard that so many times. What's your business, buddy, right? but he already know he want to be a businessman. You have to encourage that because he could come and make more money than all of us sitting down here. So it is a mindset change that we are really going for that will allow the process to work, where we see the children with special needs not as a burden, right? They're different, but yet still they're very alike because they're human beings. So from the time we can get the system to accept that this rat race is no longer needed, especially in the world today where, come on, we're not even dealing all the jobs, social media. My son loves TikTok and all, right? And people making money from these things. I mean, I recently saw we're trying to monetize YouTube. Finally, finally. And my son and me on it as I monetize because he likes that. He likes to talk. He likes to communicate. So what he didn't say 11 plus, and you understand, like we need to change the mindsets. I find if we change the mindsets, move from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset, then we'll be on the right path.
Oh yeah, Jess, we need somebody to work TikTok for us.
I can't call me. I was saying Ashton for you.
Unfortunately, we gotta start wrapping up. Okay. These conversations just go so quick. But I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to just speak about like some of the positives, some of like your good memories, success stories. I want to start with Akio. Come give me a favorite memory, man. This is a chance to big up Auntie Tania. Favorite memories at school.
I'd say my favorite memories is meeting all my friends. Yeah, more close than friends though, like family.
Right.
Like that.
That's good. I like to hear
and that. Helped me get through a lot of things. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm a business.
Good, yes. I'm telling you.
Man.
As soon as you put your name on the internet, go Google yourself and you'll see it. Tanya.
Positives. Every success of a student that I have, however great, however small, even if it's something as simple as opening a bank account, I am over the moon. Having them understand that there are other people in the world and how to treat people with the kindness that they would expect for themselves. And essentially, my gratification comes every break and lunchtime. because they do not leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I am doing
Something.
something right.
Right.
And that's it for me. Just making sure that they understand that they have a place and their place is theirs. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Asha.
For me, the positives wearing my parent advocate hat would be the changes that I'm starting to see in society. Discussions like these where we're talking openly about disability and inclusion and the challenges.
Yes.
It's felt for a long time that it's been a bit on the back burner, and there are people that would have been there before, really pushing it. So I find now seems to be the time that it's getting the attention it deserves. And we're moving in the right direction. I'm very positive about it. I'm excited to see where we're going. I like being a part of the process, and so it's encouraging. So I just met a baby with Down syndrome yesterday whose mother heard about the association, and she saw me and she brought the baby, 4 months old. So it's for that 4-month-old baby that has to come up in a Barbados that we're hoping will be accepting of her. She's 4 months, and I'm hoping that by the time she's 4 years and she's ready to go into school, mommy has her choice of schools, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't have to say, she can only go to this unit or that unit. She has her choice, and not only just schools, but schools that will support her, that will accept her, and she will get what every parent wants, which is a positive school experience for her daughter. So that's a positive for me.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for coming today. It's been an awesome conversation. If this conversation moved you, helped you, or taught you something new, follow Just a Conversation on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at GIS Barbados. And feel free to share this episode with a teacher, a parent, or a policymaker. Every child deserves to be a champion.